away, kind of the nasty thing about Medi-Cal is if you do get it and you pass away, the state can come back and recover anything they spent for your care. But in California, and in California only, trust protects any assets you have in it from the state doing that. So you guarantee that it goes to your heirs. So if you own a house, get a trust. If you have assets over the value of $160,000 in the bank, whether that's CDs, savings, checking account, whatever, investments, and maybe you're a renter, I don't know, but get a trust.
You're listening to the Her Money Story podcast with your host, Felicia Gopaul. Every woman has a story that explains her relationship to money and finances, and a woman's story about money shapes her actions, both positive and not, for years to come. This podcast is for any woman learning how to take care of her money so that her money can take care of her now and into the future.
Hello, listeners to the Her Money Story. In 2016, I wrote a book called Preparing for the 5 Ds: Divorce, Disability, Downsizing, Disasters, and Death. And in it, I explored what a woman can do to prepare for any of the 5 Ds of life. Today's guest, Bridget MacKay, an estate planning attorney in Petaluma, California, will be discussing the subject that affects 60 million Americans, which is disability. According to a report by the CDC in Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, 1 in 4 Americans have a disability that impacts their life in a major way. So I'm seeing it in my practice, in the families that I work with. And it really is having a devastating effect on their lives. It's affecting their marriages. It's affecting their stress. It's affecting the individual family members who are kind of going through it. And it puts a big strain on everything, and including the money that they've worked their entire lives in order to accumulate. So I have today's guest, and I am absolutely delighted because we were talking in a conference and she was just like, yeah, I could talk about any of those things, but the thing that I really want to talk about is I want to talk about the impact of disability on families. So Bridget, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Spread the word.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Okay. I'm an estate planning attorney, but I work a lot in elder law here in Northern California. I've been doing it for about 17 years in this practice. So hundreds and hundreds of clients and families who have faced incapacities or disabilities, and kind of help them manage their circumstances.
Got it. So the two that I'm seeing most in my practice is I'm seeing mobility issues in a family member or cognitive issues. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes.
Is that the planning that you are really wanting to talk about today?
Yes. People becoming incapacitated or disabled because of a stroke or something like Parkinson's, which is a physical thing, MS, but also a lot of dementia and forms of dementia.
Yeah, I went through the dementia thing with my father, and my mother is starting to show signs of it. So I'm definitely seeing it. But when I was sitting down with a girlfriend of mine, a college girlfriend, she said her mother was having problems with her legs. My mother is having problems with her legs. What's going on with all of these things in our family?
I'm not a medical doctor or researcher in any way, but I've definitely been exposed to a lot of them. I think there's a combination of just our longevity. I want to say in the 1940s, the average lifespan of an American was, into their mid 60s. So And now I think we're into our 70s or something on average. So I think that's part of it. I think it's also might be lifestyle as we become more digitized and streaming apps, and there's a lot less getting out there and moving around. So I don't know, but I can tell you in 17 years of doing this, I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, this incapacity issue is just becoming more frequent, almost on the daily for me, for my practice.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And one of the things that you talk about is you said something about the planning that people need to do is to hope for the best, but plan for the worst. So when you think about planning for the worst, what sorts of issues and what sorts of concerns should families be starting to think about so that they're not affected at the last minute? I got a text from one of my girlfriends who's supposed to do something for an event that we're doing together. And her boyfriend has got blockages in all 3 or 4 of the arteries into his heart. And so, he was potentially somebody who could have succumbed to a stroke or a heart attack. So what type of planning do people need to be thinking about that perhaps they're not?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We're hosting an Alzheimer's Association coffees for my clients this year, each quarter. And the last one was a research doctor who said, anything that you do for heart health is brain health. So that's important to note for all of us. But on my side of things, the two things I see most prominently are people not having assets enough to be ready for whether it's a physical or mental incapacity or disability. So, all of a sudden you're going to need help. And oftentimes families fill in like you did with your father, and you may do to a certain extent with your mother, or spouses will care for the other spouse in this role. But there's a fatigue that occurs, and so you are almost always looking to outside sourcing for help. And that has a myriad of challenges to it. I know that the cost per hour of a caregiver has gone up over the last even 5 years. It used to be an average of $15 to $25 an hour. Now it's $30, $35 an hour. San Francisco, I think it's 45 or 50, in big metro areas. So the time it takes to maybe re-outfit a home, particularly if it's a physical disability, so ramps, grab bars for even just elderly folks, like lowering down onto the toilet becomes an issue, right, at some point.
Right.
So people are re-outfitting their homes for it, or for their parents, putting granny units in the back for a caregiver or for aging parents. I mean, it runs the gamut, but at the end of the day, you're going to need some cash flow or some savings and assets on hand that will take care of that, because there's really no government program that is a total panacea to cover that kind of stuff. So the cost of care is, you need to be ready for it. And I don't know if there's a formula out there. I actually don't think there is, but, in my mind, and this may sound crazy, but, I think you need to figure anywhere from $500,000 per spouse for something like that, if it pops off. So
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. You're saying $500,000 for what? For just their care as they're aging?
Yeah, care, upgrading of a house, just all these different costs that come about when there's issues like this. Medicare is only going to cover so much. It'll cover the doctor, it'll cover the prescription, it might cover like walkers and canes and maybe some physical therapy, some to get you rehabbed. But if you have a permanent disability that's not going to go away or get worse, like in a dementia or cognitive issue, then I don't know, you kind of need to be ready for it. I've seen people do reverse mortgages. I talk regularly to folks who, look, we moved my mom out to a assisted living. Do we sell her house? Do we rent it? All of these issues come up before families when they're facing some kind of care need for a loved one. So that's what I think you need to be mentally and financially prepared to do. If you don't have the assets for that, because I know that's very high, there are some government programs that would help in the form of Medi-Cal here in California. But that's very limited care. Medi-Cal helps you if you wind up in a skilled nursing facility long-term, and long-term is anytime after, say, 3 months. It will help with in-home care, but it's not a full coverage, and you need to meet their income poverty levels. So not that many people qualify for it. And when they do, it's $15 an hour for a caregiver with a maximum of 9 hours a day. So, it doesn't help a lot of people. It will help some, but it doesn't help a lot.
Yeah, when you think about it, I mean, they're disabled. I'm going to use that in quotes. They're disabled all day, and you get 8 hours, and you get 8 hours at $15 an hour.
Dollars an hour.
Which means, and then you've got to cover any cost above that, which just seems like you're really bending down your assets pretty quickly. And the other thing that I heard you say is Medi-Cal isn't going to really cover very much. I thought that they just raised the limit on that, and the limit is now you don't have to spend down quite as much of your assets and all the rest of that. I don't want to get real technical on it, but could you give me some of the highlights of the changes?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so AB 133 started last year in July, where it used to be, the limits came down in terms of how you qualify. So the way you would qualify for Medi-Cal is the Department of Health Services or your own local welfare office would say, okay, how many assets do you have? And they don't count your home, and they don't count a car. They don't count an IRA or some kind of retirement account that's paying out, right? So in required minimum distribution. So that they don't count. But checking account, savings account, money market, brokerage, mutual funds, CDs, bonds, whatever, stocks, whatever it is, that's all counted. Second properties. So for a single person, it used to be you could only have $2,000 worth of those things to qualify, right? So very impoverished. That got bumped up July of 2022 to 130,000. And then if you're a couple, they regularly increase that amount. I believe it's at 195,000. So the wealth spouse, the spouse who doesn't need the services of Medi-Cal, could have $195,000 in those types of assets, the countable assets. Now, in January 1, 2024, Medi-Cal's not even looking at assets.
Wow.
You can have as many assets as you want. Yeah, that's huge. And I think the purpose of that, everybody was kind of like, oh my gosh, it's going to bankrupt the state. And in actual fact, the Department of Health Services really looked at where they were spending money and what was costing the department in services. And they found that training, employing eligibility workers to go through these elaborate applications for Medi-Cal, where people have spent down money to get to the impoverished state, done all, I did all that work, had these extra irrevocable trusts that you hid money in and all this stuff, clogged up the system, cost them money. And they did a survey, and statistically, they don't think, there's not going to be a rush to get Medi-Cal, because when you really look at it, the service of it is, it's care in a skilled nursing facility. That's, in a shared bedroom, a shared room, and some very bad circumstances that nobody wants to find themselves in. So they made the call where, they could save a lot of money and just not spending money on the eligibility workers to figure out if someone qualifies asset-wise. Now, they did not remove the limit for income. And income isn't an issue if you're needing care in a long-term care facility, in a skilled nursing facility, right? They don't cover assisted living, independent living, board and care. Those are all off the table. And so income comes into play if you're getting that $15 an hour for 9 hours a day in-home care. So I think a lot of people still aren't going to qualify, even though they're not counting assets, because oftentimes our Social Security checks are over the limit. I think it's $1,600 for a single person, and I think we're up to $1,800 or $1,900 for a married couple in income. So they kind of cut their losses in terms of employment and benefits for workers, which is a bad news, but good news for those people who find themselves in a situation where they need Medi-Cal in a skilled nursing facility. They're not going to have to go through a lot of the hoops that we were helping our clients do. So that's kind of the change in the Medi-Cal arena. So it goes back to the original point, which is we do need to save for this. You can try for a long-term care insurance policy, and that market is expanding in products so that there are now life insurance policies with, long-term care riders, so that if you never use the long-term care part, you get your money back, as opposed to the original form of that, where it was more like a homeowner's insurance. You pay your premium every year, you may or may not use it. But again, it's contractually based. So if anybody's out there looking at that, really, get the advice of Felicia or someone else in your life to review it and make sure that's a good contract. But your premiums are going to jump up. You have a window of time to get a long-term care insurance policy age-wise, right? You want to start looking maybe mid-50s at the latest mid-60s, but past mid-60s, your premiums are going to be so outrageous, you might as well put it in the stock market and, build your wealth that way.
So let me just ask you, so when you're sitting down and talking with families nowadays, and we're in the new world, or at least the world that's coming, what sorts of documents do you help people put in place to prepare? Because it seems to me that there's really two aspects of it. There's the aspect of needing to care people on the medical side, and then make decisions on the medical side, and then there's also the financial side. Is there so could you talk about those two, and if there's anything that I didn't cover that also needs to be included?
Yeah. Oh, that's easy. So the best document to prepare yourself for any kind of
easy. That's easy for an estate planning attorney. Just be clear, she's an estate planning attorney.
Yeah.
That's something you should do on your own and find some sort of no low press version of it.
Oh yeah, no, definitely don't do that, or Zoom or LegalZoom or anything like that. No, I meant easy to answer.
Good.
You definitely want to get a trust. I would say the threshold for needing the trust is if you own a home. It's pretty straightforward. Getting a trust, even just to protect your home, avoids probate, conservatorships if it's a medical issue. It protects you if you do end up on Medi-Cal and pass away. Kind of the nasty thing about Medi-Cal is if you do get it and you pass away, the state can come back and recover anything they spent for your care. But in California, and in California only, trust protects any assets you have in it from the state doing that. So you guarantee that it goes to your heirs. So if you own a house, get a trust. If you have assets over the value of $160,000 in the bank, whether that's CDs, savings, checking account, whatever, investments, and maybe you're a renter, I don't know, but get a trust. So,
Okay.
and then those within an estate plan, like getting a trust really involves getting an estate plan, not just the trust, but power of attorney, which is your financial person agent that you identify that can take care of all your financial needs if you're incapacitated. Between that and the trust, usually all financial decisions are covered and can be done by someone you trust and you've chosen if you're unable to do it anymore. And then healthcare directive is also in that plan typically. And that's a health decision making person. So you name an agent in that as well. So that when you're unable, you're alive, but you're unable to do any of these things, all of those documents work together to allow those people you trust to step in on your behalf and start making plans, and making sure your care is covered and you're getting proper care and health decisions made.
Absolutely. And it's important, I think the thing that you said that I really wanted to put a pen in is it's got to be people that you trust, because we all have somebody in your life that you would not have in control of your money. We all know somebody that we would not have in control of your money.
Yeah.
You also want to make sure that the person who has control of your money works with the person who is the healthcare person. I remember one time I was working with a client and they ended up splitting the roles, and the person who was taking care of the person's body kind of issues was fighting with the person who was handling the money issues. And it just was real, it's like, I want to do this for this person. Well, then, this person was a dollars and cents person. And they're just like, no, I don't think you should. And the person who was taking care of the person's body could not get that person to come off of that. And so it was I just remember it just being a really ugly, messy fight, with the person in the middle, just in the middle.
Well, yeah, the ill person that's totally at the mercy of this fight. I had something similar with two sisters, just lifelong animosity between these two girls. And I think the dad thought, well, I'll give this one the health because that's kind of the industry she's in. And I'll give this one the financial and, with these dreams that they'll work together. And that just never happens. I mean, I'm regularly counseling clients, like, if your kids aren't getting along, don't put them both on anything or in a position where they have to work together. Just pick one. Pick one. The other one could be mad and, cause a stir, but at least you have a decision maker for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what sorts of things aren't people planning for that you think that they should be planning for?
That's a good question. I mean, incapacity. I think, I don't know if it's a human nature thing or the over positivity of Americans. I don't know, but we just don't think it's going to happen to us, even though it might be happening all around us. Or we're afraid, or we procrastinate. We don't want to think about it. Also, some people I think are resigned that it's too late. And I believe it's just never too late. You could speak to that, Felicia. I mean, it is never too late to save and put money aside and invest and be prudent. Because you don't know how long you're going to live or when you're going to need it,
Right. Absolutely.
There's no downside to it either, because it just goes to your favorite charity or your family or, so. Yeah, I think that is the main theme I see. People just are not ready for what's happening. The other thing I see is a lot of denial in either a spouse or an adult child of someone who's starting to maybe mentally deteriorate.
Yeah.
I think there's a myth in relationships of generations where, the younger generation doesn't want to dig into the private things of their parents. They don't want to appear greedy if they're asking about it. They don't want to appear that they're overstepping their bounds. And the older generation is protective about this information, and they don't want to let anyone in because either they think it is greedy for your child to want to know where your assets are and what's happening, who's named on things, or they're embarrassed by maybe something they're trying to hide. I don't know. But I do know that just leads to really much more chaos and pain than it really needs to be. The more transparent those two generations could be, the better. And don't miss the signs. If there's various stage of rotting carrots in your mother's refrigerator, there's something wrong, So yeah, that I see a lot of denial happening in families, a lot of sort of internal politics that actually end up to the detriment of the aged person. They're more open to fraud. They're going to go too long without getting help. And then it's at a bad state when it could have been dealt with sooner. So that's one of my main things I want to get across to people is they need to communicate.
It's funny that you should say that, because as you were talking, I just kept on thinking, and I kept on having all of these flashback moments, when things are happening in your family's life and you're just not paying attention. I got a phone call when my father was was going through dementia, and he had a long-term girlfriend who used to write checks for him when he got confused and couldn't do that anymore. And she ended up giving me a call because he wanted her to write a check for $50,000. And so she's okay writing, the check for, $25 for the groceries or, whatever, but $50,000 just was outside of her comfort level.
Good for her. Good for her for telling you.
So she gave me a phone call, and it was so my father was somebody who liked to speculate with gold. And so he had decided to make a purchase with gold for whoever called him off over the phone. And this guy was trying to get his money for the gold purchase. And, and so it was like fraud, and, his capacity was changing, and, just all of these kind of flashbang moments inside of this thing. And it's just like, and I'm telling you, and the other thing that I was reminded of is you and I have been going to this training where we talk about the do not talk rule. And I thought that I had really handled that. And then I realized that I still have the do not talk rule with my mother. So as my mother's health has been changing, I was concerned, even though I'm a financial advisor, to talk to my mom about where are you? How is your money situated? Are we going to have to step in and take care of you? We didn't want to talk to my mother about that. And I'd imagine that this is one of those things that also comes up with incapacity.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And sometimes, sadly, with incapacity, paranoia is a symptom of it. So the elder gets even more kind of closed. It's fraud is rampant. I mean, I get it on my cell phone in the morning sometimes. They're like, oh, your Netflix payment isn't going through as a text, click here and add your credit card. I mean, it's just, horrible.
Yeah, it really is horrible. So we're coming close to the end. I'm just wondering, Bridget, is there anything else that you want to make sure that my listeners know about with this issue?
No, I think we hit the highlights. And it all sort of flows, while your parents or your loved one, or if it's you and your spouse are of sound mind, make sure you have your affairs in order. Do you have an estate plan? Are the people, maybe it's old, so look at it and make sure the people are still who you want them to be. And it's always good to keep those things updated. I have my clients come in every 3 years for a review. We do a free appointment where we just kind of go over everything. Second, figure out where your assets are. Could you handle, a need for care? Because I see also some families where one spouse is staying in the house and one spouse is getting care outside of the house. So all of a sudden your monthly budget has doubled. I see a lot of older folks still working. I have a client who's still working into her mid-70s because her husband's in assisted living and she's got to cover her expenses and needs and his. So look at that and be transparent with the people you trust. And make sure everybody's on the same page, because I can tell you when these events occur, whether it's quickly, like a stroke, or a fall or a hip break, or if it's coming on slowly, it adds a whole nother layer to your life. And I would say the first degree outside of your life of the people you love, level of chaos and uncertainty and stress. And so the more we can be transparent and ready for it, just what a great loving gift you can give to your family and your community and yourself by getting ready for it.
Absolutely. So Bridget, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you and they happen to be up in the Petaluma area, how would they get a hold of you?
They could call our office. It's area code 707-769-9975. They can shoot us a text at contact@Bridget, BRIDGET, MacKay, MACKAY, law.com. We also have a website and you can go on there and contact us too.
And listeners, I will definitely include all of that contact information in the notes for this particular podcast. And Bridget, it has been a pleasure. I think you have definitely given our listeners and a lot to think about and to prepare for. Because you and I are both people who like people who get prepared. And it's why I wrote the book. I mean, because I found that the woman that I was working with had one of these events happen in their life and they just weren't prepared for it. So this is really our a loving it's just our way of showing our love for our listeners to help you start to think about these things. And while, as you said, that you don't want to go through it, the reality is it could happen to you. And as Bridget says, it's better to be prepared than not. So thank you very much for being with me.
Thank you, Felicia. Thank you for your book. That is so true. And thank you for having me on. I really enjoyed it. I hope it's helpful.
It is very helpful. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay. See you soon. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Her Money Story Podcast. Want more from Felicia Gopaul? Then subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss a minute. While you're there, feel free to rate and leave a review. We really appreciate it. And if you're interested in going deeper, visit FeliciaGopaul.com. Thank you again, and we'll catch you in our next episode.